Welcome to Vintage SF. I'm Richard Rempel. Today we're going to talk about The Joy Makers by James Gunn, but we're also going to talk about Theodore Sturgeon, Star Trek the series, and also a Star Trek novel. How do these all connect? Stay tuned. James Gunn's fix-up novel The Joy Makers from 1961 was originally published in magazine form in 1955 in 3 stories: Name Your Pleasure, The Naked Sky, and The Unhappy Man. In the novel, they took the 3 stories and made it 3 parts. In part 1, Joshua R. Hunt, president of Hunt Electronic Manufacturing Company, is an unhappy man. He starts to notice ads for Hedonics Inc. Why be miserable? Dial PLEASUR, pleasure. Happiness guaranteed by Hedonics Inc. Eventually, Josh books an appointment, and he sits in a mysterious chair, and his physical ailments are healed. But if he wants complete happiness, not only his physical ailments will be cured, but his psychological happiness guaranteed, his life completely managed by the company. With this story being written in 1955, or perhaps just earlier, one wonders if there is some sort of a satirical look here at Dianetics. If you're not familiar with Dianetics, it's something that was invented by science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard. It has to do with auditing and clearing your mind of that which holds you back. Hedonics, on the other hand, is simply looking to make you happy. In part 1, a salesperson from Hedonics is selling their product. We take care of everything. We arrange your life so that you never have to worry again. In this age of anxiety, you never have to be anxious. In this age of fear, you need never be afraid. You will always be fed, clothed, housed, and happy. You will love and be loved. Life for you will be unmixed joy. There are additional benefits such as our researches into longevity, just now bearing fruit incidentally, which will be used for the benefit of our unlimited service clients first of all. Happiness, Josh said distantly, and a long life to enjoy it. That would be worth a fortune. But he could hear warning bells inside his head. They said, "Skin game, skin game." "What's the price?" Josh asked. "As you say," Wright said thoughtfully, "it would be worth a fortune. The price is steep, but it's worth it. The price is everything." "Everything?" Josh repeated, his voice squeaking a little. Wright nodded soberly. "All assets, including personal and real property and savings and future earnings, are signed over to the corporation. It isn't as exorbitant as it sounds. The client has no more use for money. All his needs are taken care of by the corporation." "There's a great inequity," Josh protested. "A laborer might have only a few dollars. A wealthy man would have to pay millions." "It depends on your yardstick," Wright said, shrugging. "To both, it is all they have. For us, it averages out, and it can't matter to the client. Money is worthless to them." Further into the story, Josh realizes some implications of this offer. "Then this is what they're trying to do," Josh said slowly, pounding out the words to the rhythmic thump of his fist on the desk. "Why can't anyone see the danger? In a few weeks, they'll own Millville, industry, real estate, municipal property, right down to the sewers. They'll own everything fixed in place and everything movable, including 3/4 of the people." "They can't own people," Stewart objected. "That's slavery." "Read that contract again," Josh told him sternly. "It's worse than slavery. That, at least, left the mind free." His voice became quiet, but its intensity was more frightening than if he had shouted. "I can see it clearly now. Within a few years, Hedonics Inc. will be the greatest single economic force in the country. They will own the United States. It won't be necessary to take over the government. Hedonics Inc. will permit the government to take out an unlimited service contract." Stewart had been studying Josh apprehensively. "That's a lot of extrapolation from a single incident." We continue to follow Josh's story in part 1. I found the ending of this part to be poignant and satisfying. At the beginning of part 2, or the second story, we have some definitions. Hedonics, psychomedical science dealing with the nature and pursuit of happiness. Hedonism. 1. Ethics, the doctrine that pleasure is the only good in life and that moral duty is fulfilled in the gratification of pleasure-seeking instincts. Hedonist. 1. One who lives in accordance with hedonism, i.e., for pleasure. 2. since 2005. Remember, these stories were written in the 1950s. Since 2005, a practitioner of hedonics. Part 2 is a time jump into the year 2035. This is now a brave new world. Hedonic Inc.'s product has been adopted by almost all. Its practitioners are called hedonists. We follow one such hedonist, an older man, who treats young women, preparing them for marriage, also prevents people from committing suicide, and requires plastic surgery for the unhappy. Ultimately, if they cannot succeed in making you happy, you will be lobotomized. But what if the hedonist himself is no longer necessary for the happiness of others? This one was definitely the weakest of the three stories. In part 3, colonies have been established on other planets in our solar system. Our protagonist is Douglas, a colonist on Venus. While hedonics is part of their planet, they cannot guarantee happiness for all because life is brutal and it is hard work to create a colony. There is a threat to the colony, duplicates, who may be aliens. They have lost contact with Earth for hundreds of years. Douglas is sent on a mission to Earth. What is the final outcome of hedonics taking over an entire planet? But can it be said, a voice broke into his reverie, that here hedonism has reached its goal, the greatest happiness of the greatest number? The ending may remind you of perhaps Philip K. Dick or the movie The Matrix. What is real? This was another good story. As I said before, these three stories were part of the fix-up novel The Joy Makers of 1961. A friend of James Gunn, Theodore Sturgeon, thought this story could make a great script for Star Trek. The Joy Machine. Science fiction author Theodore Sturgeon wrote several episodes for the original series. Only 2, Shore Leave and Amok Time, were produced. One of his unproduced stories was The Joy Machine. This is an adaptation of The Joy Makers by James Gunn. The Enterprise is sent to investigate a planet that has cut off all communication with the Federation. Among the missing is a former lover of Kirk's. The crew discover that the population has been enslaved by a machine. Producer Robert Justman planned to film The Joy Machine during Season 2. His successor, Fred Freiberger, brought it back in Season 3, when Meyer Dolinsky rewrote the script to include a love story for Scotty. It was meant to be the 25th episode of the season, but the studio canceled Star Trek after 24 episodes. The script was turned into a novel by Sturgeon's friend and fellow science fiction writer James Gunn in 1996. So we have The Joy Makers as stories in the 1950s. In 1961, they're gathered together in a fix-up novel called The Joy Makers by James Gunn. Then Theodore Sturgeon takes that story and writes an episode for Star Trek, an episode that's not produced. And finally, that episode becomes a Star Trek novel written by who? James Gunn. Seems fair that finally James Gunn was able to get that final check. So what's my final rating for the fix-up novel itself? Well, the first story was really good. I would give it an 8 out of 10. The second story, not so much. It tried to be Brave New World with adventure. It really kind of fell flat. I give it a 5 out of 10. But the third story brought it back up to the level of the first story. I would give it another 8 out of 10. So overall, perhaps I would give it a 7. Let's call it a 7.5. It's worth reading. Now, I haven't read the novelization The Joy Machine. Has anyone read that? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep reading. One to beam up, Mr. Scott.